Well, thank you so much, Felicia, and all of you at HAYVN. I've been working for the Business Council of Fairfield County for the last 7, 8 years. It's my second stint there, so I worked for there longer. And I've been working as the Vice President of focusing on human capital and higher education. And the Business Council of Fairfield County was a 50-year-old organization that was working on infrastructure issues for the region, public policy. We were the organization that coined the 30-30-30 rail transportation initiative. You may have heard of it. It's now the governor has taken it on. We were part of getting the commissioner of transportation into Joe Giletti in place. So we did a lot of infrastructure, both physical and non-physical, or as you would think of infrastructure. And human capital and higher education are a huge issue in this region and many regions. And they are what keeps CEOs up at night. Like, we have spoken to CEOs, and basically they're worried about talent attraction, skills, retention. And so I spent the last 7 years creating programming to create a place that can develop, attract, and retain the next generation of talent. So when Felicia was so kind, the Business Council closed on March 31st, and Felicia reached out and said, come to our HAYVN events and meetings. And so having gone to several of these half-times, I just wanted to give back. And so I thought I would share my point of view about the future of work. It's pretty much a workforce perspective. Okay, so I'm going to talk about 3 things: why the work is changing, how it will change, and what it will mean to you as an individual and leader. And also, I have many slides. If you have a technical question about a slide, ask Felicia in the chat. Otherwise, we'll have questions at the end. So write them down. Okay, so why work is changing. So I want to talk, the next 3 slides are a little bit about the 4th Industrial Revolution, which you may have already heard about, but the first industrial revolution went from manufacturing and weaving and farming, and then we moved into more of a mass production. And then you're familiar with the third industry was really the automation and the beginning of computers. But now we're really moved into cyber and Internet of Things, and that's all the rage. And what the underlying issues are that is creating this is the technology acceleration. This is from Thomas Friedman's book, Thank You for Being Late. It has captured my attention, this chart, as soon as I saw it, was talking about how because of the silicon chips, there was a creation of Moore's law that says the pace of change in technology is going to double every year. So basically, if you look at the arc, they talked about the hockey stick. The arc is how quickly technology is changing. And then the other curve, which is more flat, is talking about the human adaptability to the change. And what we're seeing here is that the technology is way above the ability of humans to adapt to it. And so this is one of the fundamentals of why we're in such a rapid evolution in the 4th Industrial Revolution. And so this is another chart that explains both of those concepts. And what I like about this chart is that it shows that between the steam engine and the combustion engine, you could have 2.5 lifetimes or generations. And so that was plenty of time to pass down what you knew to another generation and to teach people the new job. And then you start to see that shortening. So by the time we're here, everything is changing so quickly that this is the reason that people have to constantly reskill, and also why some of the fundamentals about how we educate our population, you can't just go to school once and think that you're going to know what's going on for the lifespan of your career. Another big piece that has changed is around demographics. So clearly the white will no longer be a majority. Hispanic, Latinx is going to be the majority. You've got people are less religious. You have all sorts of fluidity in gender identity, and you have families. So there's a whole bunch of different types of people that are going to be working and going to be more the majority in the workforce. And I also thought this was an interesting slide from Lindsay Pollack, who's an expert on the millennial population. So we hear that there are 5 generations in the workplace, and you might not think that's as big a deal. That's, you know, you think about it. If you think about it and looking at this chart, you can see that the generations grew up, even if they were ethnically similar, they grew up with completely different technologies and things happening in the world. And so the framework of people in different generations, it's just not that you're older, it's that you have an entirely different worldview. And so there's a diversity along when you grew up, what you grew up with, and the environment you grew up in. Like, how old were you when it was 9/11? You know, now it's going to be how old were you and what happened to you in the coronavirus. It's going to shape your worldview. So that's, and then of course we have the coronavirus. So and that's changing the world of work in ways that we hadn't planned on, with 40 million people unemployed in the US. And we're seeing that the larger, smaller firms are getting, as you know, smaller firms are getting really hurt, although we do have some props, that some of the industries are being decimated, like the travel industry right now is being decimated. It's totally highlighting the social inequities that were there anyway. And then one of the things that is interesting for me is that it's disrupting the formal education process, because we were on the cusp of that anyway. Like a lot of the work I did with sitting in meetings with the presidents of our schools and the CEOs of some of our local companies was talking about, how these schools have to change, but nobody was willing to make the change. It's sort of like nobody was willing to work remotely and trust their workers remotely. But COVID is just forcing some of the structural issues that we were prepared or on the cusp of, but not really emotionally prepared to take care of. So this disruption of formal education is going to be, especially higher ed, is going to be really interesting. Okay, so how is work changing as a result of those influences and more than I didn't mention? Okay, so everything's going to be integrated with digital. I've been thinking a lot about this once I saw that Thomas Friedman chart. Like, how much digital do we need to really know? Does everybody need to become a coder? That's my big question. Does everybody need to become a coder? And I think that no, not everybody needs to be a coder. But digital, we're going to be in partnership with digital. And while the picture is really scary and some of the articles are really scary, we're already doing it, right? So we already, like, how much do you rely on your phone? How many phone numbers do you actually know, or names do you remember without looking at your phone? Do you have a car that helps you back up because it has the screen? So we're already in it. So we're already living it. It's not going to happen. It's slowly happening, and we are adapting. And then I do think that there are parts of jobs that will be replaced, but what's really significant in addition to that, tech will touch all jobs, right? And so what will happen is that technology, if you look at technology and the different ways it can work, it can augment your job. So it can augment your mind and your memory by putting your phone numbers in there. It can automate your job, like a self-driving car. And then you can take small pieces out of a job that exists and atomize that and take it to make it digital. So you're going to see it's not going to be a wide swath of just, everybody's going to lose their job, but different aspects of jobs are going to change in different ways. So that pairs with the fact, as a result, we're going to have new jobs that we don't really know about. So this was a job of the drone operator for delivering Amazon products. I mean, like, who went to school to learn to be a drone operator to deliver products? So there's new types of jobs that are not even invented. I'm working right now with the UConn Digital Media and Design program because they're trying to have parents and students understand that digital media is a career path. People don't really understand that they can send their kids to school and that they could get a good job in digital media. And we do have a digital media cluster of firms in Fairfield County and in the state. So, people just didn't even know that these jobs existed. And those are just some of the jobs we can think of right now. Of course, we're going to have contingent workforce and project-oriented work in the new jobs, in new roles. Another interesting piece for me was that as much as we think that the essential skills are the technology skills, because everyone's talking about a technology gap, really, as much as we do need that, it's really a lot of the human skills and that are hard to teach, that are what the companies are looking for. I don't know how to do the notes on this, but I have this IBM research that says that's the talking points in the IBM research are that skilled humans fuel the global economy and digital skills remain vital. However, executives tell us soft skills have surpassed them in importance. And then they also said skills availability and quality are in jeopardy. The half-life of skills continues to shrink while the time it takes to close a skills gap has ballooned. Organizations must find ways to stay ahead of skills relevancy. So, next slide. So what does this mean to you as an individual and leader? So this is on the top left-hand corner of this slide is sort of how it used to be when people were living till 73. You could educate, work, retire, done, right? And now people have been talking about how the fact that you can live longer, work longer, and have a short retraining in the middle and have these big 20-year careers. But really what is happening, and I imagine you as entrepreneurs are really seeing this and living this, is that people are working longer. The careers and the amount of learning and the types of jobs you're doing are changing, and that you have to keep learning to stay involved with the next project or the next job that you have. The digital fluency piece, I think that people will need to be really fluent digitally, but not everybody has to code. You have to be able to interpret information, know what it means, know how to use it, know where technology can be helpful, and how to find those kind of technological solutions or people that know them. You need to be able to interpret, data analytics, and you need to be able to communicate using data, but not everybody has to be able to code. And then the other piece is the idea of leading versus managing, and about how it's more important to be, like you were talking about, Eileen, be a coach, and to really understand, how to lead people, how to help people. But it's no longer that people are going to be in a corporate hierarchical structure where they are given authority. You're going to be working on teams, and you're going to have trust and a whole different set of skills in order to lead in this new work environment. You're going to have people younger than you, older than you, different ethnicity, that kind of thing. And so you're going to have to be able to work in that way. And another piece is that people are now looking at hiring rather than hiring directly for the skills needed now, hiring for people that are able to learn, people that are able to be lifelong learners, and people who are able to, who are curious and self-directed and can work in a team. So, so this is sort of like from before you had to know, before it was teacher-centered to learner-centered. Basically it's a whole different way of thinking about most everything. So I think that's it. So do you have questions? I don't know how fast I did that. Not bad, really fast. Should I stop my screen sharing? Did I talk too fast?
Yeah,
No.
Yeah, we'll stop screen sharing. That's good.
Okay.
And we can.
Well, I'd like to ask a question, because some of this seems directed to, what you're not only enlightening us, but also what your children might choose to do in terms of once they go off to college. Take someone like me who's been out of the workforce for a long time. I've done, volunteer work, etc. And I certainly, I use the internet. I know what the Internet of Things is. But in terms of using, say Excel, macro spreadsheets and that sort of stuff, I haven't done any of that in years. And now we're talking about, everything being connected to digital. What would your advice be to someone who's re-entering the job force after a long period of time away, not totally without doing work, but in a volunteer capacity? What do you think that I need to bone up on?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, it certainly depends on what you think you want to do. And I did talk to a headhunter about this just 2 days ago. Basically, the world of work has changed. And so what we were talking about would be whether you could find someone in a job that you would want to go to, and find out how is the work changed. So let's say you were an attorney and you want to go back in and be an attorney. It'd be interesting to informationally interview people to find out what attorneys are doing now. Like, how has that job shifted, so that you would understand what are the areas that you may or may not need to know more about.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Okay.
Cynthia,
Yeah.
this is Carol Vinci.
Hi.
I'm putting together an online course to help managers manage in the remote workforce arena, and I would love to connect with you. I don't know if you're open to sit-down meetings or how we might do that.
Let's just do it over Zoom. I actually did have a call with, I think about 15 HR professionals yesterday about how they are supporting managers in the workplace right now as they go remote. Because the sense is that the managers, first of all, I guess less than half of the managers ever really get managerial training when they get their first job. So that's one gap. And then the second thing is that CEOs are seeing that the managers are the first line, to what's really happening. And so they are working on creating skills sets and manager portfolios for the people that are managing, how to motivate, how to coach, how to, that kind of thing. So they're working on it heavily in the larger organizations, and I'd be happy to talk about it, Carol.
That'd be great. I'll figure out how to get in touch with you. I'm not a HAYVN member because I live about over an hour and a half away, but I do travel down to their events because it's always enlightening.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you can, I think on that last slide, or I can type in my email. Want my email?
Please.
Okay.
Yeah, we should put your email in for chat for everybody. Yeah, no, it's so fascinating because one of the first books that I read when I had my idea to start the co-working space was Thomas Friedman's Thank You for Being Late.
Yeah.
And I always quote it because I just think, it hit on so many things, like why I believe co-working is so important in this whole flexible office space, because, technology is there, but people still need that human touch. And I think something like this fits, like co-working fits perfectly in what his view of where things are going. So it was just fascinating that you happened to mention it. And a lot of the information, was kind of what I saw was, some of it, wrapped in just like what's happening in this world. And I think from the co-working side, and I know David's on too, who owns a co-working space, they're saying what's happened now with the whole COVID virus is that it's actually accelerated where work is going to be. So we're really now in 2030. Like we've been saying all along that trying to get people to realize that they don't have to be in an office, and just with technology and everything else, you can be work out of your home or work anywhere, but this has accelerated it. And now the corporations are having to figure out like how to deal with this, because the people I've seen it. A lot of people are like, I don't ever really want to go back to an office again. I don't need to, but I still am lonely and I need to be in some place once in a while. So anyway, it's just fascinating.
Right. So they say like the genie is out of the bottle. Like, so everybody was like, oh, should we go remote? And then all of a sudden everybody had to go remote. And some of the concerns I'm hearing now is, how do you replicate the water cooler opportunity for serendipity, and also the opportunity to just stop in someone's office, like when you hear that they're not doing something, so how do you get that a little bit of an unplanned, how do I pick your brain? So that seems to be sort of the edge of people's concerns. Virginia, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I think this was a phenomenal presentation, so thank you, Cynthia. I have a technology company and I've been purely virtual from day one. And in some ways, when I was doing investment pitches, that was sometimes a sticking point because they didn't really take me seriously as a true business. So this whole movement has become very validating for me. I'm not a coder, but I can step between the two worlds, and so I'm totally on board with what you're saying. I've actually just gotten an intern, and he's in college. And I found it interesting that, you know, you think that these, and I was just actually explaining to him that when I first started my career, we didn't even have voicemail. We didn't have email, we didn't have voicemail. And so I've had to make this huge transition. He's born into this world. But anyway, I was actually shocked at how, you know, these kids, they use technology constantly, but they don't really understand it. They don't really understand how it works. And so there's a big disconnect there that I was thinking about, and, you know, trying to see how I can help bridge that for him. But I think it could be writ large, you know, across the workforce.
Yeah, and the question is, so that chart from Thomas Friedman, I'm really interested in that intersection, like where do people need to be? Like, what do we need to know, and what do we need to get to that understanding line? There's a course called CS 50, Computer Science 50, that started at Harvard, that is about how computers work. And that was like a huge sold out course at Harvard. And then have you heard of it? And then they offered it now at Yale. And now it's pretty much, it's on either Coursera or something. But that's really how do computers work. And so there is a big thing about when you're looking at IT and everything, like there's computer science, there's technology, there's being able to bridge that gap. There's just so much in terms of being digitally fluent. So, you know, what does digitally fluent actually mean? And for each job, it'll be different in terms of what you need to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought, this is Melissa, I bought the book, Thank You for Being Late, a couple of years ago when I'd worked remotely for 15 years. And then I was at IBM and everyone had to go back into the office. And when I went back in the office, it was mostly millennials. And, you know, there was some real, you know, I think I bought it to try to figure out how to motivate some of the millennials, because it just was such a divide, I think, between the different generations. We were kind of all on slightly different pages. But, you know, it's fascinating. I think the business skills and the maturity that, you know, you have when you've been working for a while, you know, I could see the gaps that although the millennials were very technically proficient, they just didn't have the depth of knowledge and the expertise. So I thought really it was a good pairing, because you could almost do reverse mentoring with, you know, technical skills and business skills. So it's, you know, it's a fascinating environment. It's quite different when you all of a sudden have to go back to the office when you've been used to working remotely for so long.
Anne Maguire had sent something in chat. She wanted to know, how do you recommend that we continue to follow the information that you shared and stay up to date on the trends related to these changes?
Oh, I'll type her name in. I follow Heather Maguire. Let me see, is that right? I'm Heather McGowan. I follow Heather McGowan. You'll see that there were, Heather McGowan and work to.
Can you type her name in the chat?
Man, I follow her. She also writes in Forbes, but I think she, you know, the future of work is her thing, and she's really good at creating these visuals that sort of are explaining a lot of complicated things at one time. And there's a CS, yeah. So it's a little tricky because when people talk about the future of work, there's so many different angles to look at it. Were you gonna say something, Katsaya?
Oh, yeah, hi. Yeah, no, I really appreciate what you're saying, because I develop online courses. I'm an e-learning expert, but it's been an effort to kind of convince people about how it can be done effectively. And so you're right in that we've been forced to do it, and the people have to figure out how to work remotely. So it has forced us to move forward. 2030, I mean, I heard you say that and I'm thinking, wow, but that's the case. We have to think about how to operate in a more integrated way, be healthy, but be as effective and successful. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's really important because, you know, I had 2 kids that got sent home from college to take online courses, and, you know, the universities don't know how to teach them.
They don't know how to make them many times. So I've worked even as a professor, but I am supporting many people in doing that. So it takes something to do it in the right way, where you have that social element and that interactive and engaging part. But I have an idea, and I'm going to throw it out there. Okay. So I have an 18-year-old who's very smart, and every time I come to these meetings, I hear people talking about what parents are dealing with. And then I'm in these meetings with universities, and you've had meetings with HR. So I'm thinking, with this HAYVN space, what is a way we can engage youth and get more interns? I had 5 interns this spring, but they were from New York. So in Connecticut, is there a way or a program we can do where businesses can get interns, maybe through some kind of HAYVN program, and we connect with schools to support them or to bring the students in? So I went to Tufts. Tufts is offering something. Manhattan College, where I taught, is offering something. But Connecticut colleges are not necessarily connecting with businesses and connecting the youth that are now at home watching hours and hours of TV, or the businesses that some of them are funded and they need help, right? Like Virginia mentioned, she has one. But I know that if we can come up with something to connect all these needs, maybe there's a way to tap into this new way of working, right?
So it's interesting that, what?
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say Sacred Heart has a program like that. They have a innovation center up there, and they have businesses. It's basically a co-working space, but they also have interns that are available. So I think it was really designed for companies who wanted to have interns to be able to work out of that space. It's up on their campus.
But I mean, I would, like we had talked about this another time, I would love for HAYVN to be a center for that. And I just, like, in my own bandwidth, I don't have time to, like we talked about putting a Facebook page together or doing something. I am so open for it if someone can help me coordinate this. You know, we have our board, we can use our mailing list. I think it's really important. It's actually interesting. I had someone take a tour yesterday that they have 3 18-year-olds that are supposed to be going off to boarding school.
Mm-hmm.
It's 3 girls and they're going to possibly rent 3 of my offices as their school for the next 6 months, 3 of the private offices. So I'm open to that. And if you have suggestions, I'm happy to use our platform and, pull people together.
So I have a lot of relationships with the career centers, because I used to run, for the last 7 years, I've run an internship roundtable group. So the question, I think, is we could definitely connect you, but the question is, do you have jobs? Like, do you have?
Yeah, no, I can write up something and send it out to Felicia and you
Okay.
can look at. It's connecting the universities who are in charge of the students, clarifying how businesses can participate, and streamlining it. So Felicia's not doing a lot of management, but
Right.
you have a job, a task to do, description, and then having the students apply, and then a place coordinating how they come into HAYVN. I even had this idea, if possible, that you have so much parking space, you could have like a weekend where people put out tables and there is social distancing and you can, right? So you're very well set.
Well, it's funny because Cynthia, I don't know if you remember, the way that I met you was we started this because we were going to do a career fair with Catherine Solomon, with Runa Knapp, who
Right.
was the headhunting, and then with you, and kind of coordinate a career fair at HAYVN. That was scheduled for the spring, which we didn't get to. But if there's something, a platform, I'm all open for, like, maybe pull a team together to do this.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that and working on this as well, because SCORE has, we have lots of small business clients, and I think everyone's looking for interns. I know we are. So I think if there was a way to bring that all together so that it was, there's a place for them to work, and
And the kids are really looking for internships.
They are.
Yeah.
They have been decimated. A lot of their planned internships have been, gone by the wayside. So, and also the schools are becoming a lot more open to, more flexible situations. So.
Okay.
You're very right. I also coach in Girls with Impact, and high school girls but I'm getting even younger girls who want to do their businesses and have ventures. They're very smart. I think as you've mentioned earlier, the kids now are smart, but they don't have a place to apply that smartness.
Mhm.
And so I think there's an opportunity here